everyone. Welcome to AMC Movie Talk for movie fans. I'm Chris Lee Kennedy, and this is the show where we bring you the day's biggest movie news, and of course, we give you insight into what it all means. Hosting our show today in a very special big boy chair is our AMC production manager, Mr. Dennis Sen.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of AMC Movie Talk. And yeah, as you can see, John is not here, but through the miracle of technology, we will be able to Skype him in.
We also have joining us at the table one of our favorites from JoeBlow.com, Mr. Jimmy O.
Hey, oh, there's my camera. I'm always I'm like, too early in the morning. How are you? Thanks for having me again.
And somewhere floating in cyberspace in Vegas. You may not see his video, but you will hear his voice. No, it's not God. It's Mr. John Campea.
Yeah, one and the same. It's 1 6 1 half dozen the other. Hey, everybody.
All right, guys, let's get this started. This morning, Fox has released the second full trailer to the highly anticipated X-Men Days of Future Past. The movie marks the return of director Bryan Singer to the franchise and will open in AMC theaters on May 23rd. Dennis, what do you think of this new trailer?
I think it looks awesome. It's probably one of the best trailers that we've seen so far this year. And I think, I want to say this with the keyword potential. This potentially could be one of the best comic book movies ever. Potentially. Just judging on the trailers. And, you know, having Bryan Singer back to this franchise, I think going to reinvigorate. Hopefully, he's going to do X-Men Apocalypse as well. I loved all the shots. The one interesting thing about this trailer is that as a new trailer, usually you see recycled footage, you know, maybe like 50%, and you see 50% new footage. This is 90% all new shots. And I love the shots of the Sentinels flying in. You see some of Magneto and Mystique's relationship and a whole bunch of other things. And yeah, I'm just super excited about this. What about you, Jimmy?
Absolutely, 100%. I'm excited about the Sentinels. They look a little different, but
yeah.
I think they look great. I'm fine with that. They look cool. I'm completely on board with this. There's not a doubt in my mind this is going to be I know with the X-Men series, it hasn't always been perfect.
No.
But this one looks like it's really bringing it back to where it's never been before. I'm stoked.
Cool.
Completely.
John, what do you think?
This is one of those trailers where, here's the deal. If you say you don't like this trailer, then my automatic assumption is going to be that you pre-decided you weren't going to like it before you saw it, because there's absolutely nothing not to like about this trailer. This trailer is insane, and Dennis, you nailed it. When you said the look of this trailer gives you the sense that this has the potential, again, potential, not saying it's going to get there, whatever, but the tone and the feel of this is breathtakingly good. Like ridiculously good. And I'll say this, I'm changing my mind about the look of Quicksilver. Because, you know, for the longest time, we all said, oh my gosh, Quicksilver looks so ridiculous, blah, 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 blah. But you know what? Somebody pointed this out to me, and it's really true, and it has hit home for me. Got to keep in mind, this is the 70s, where everything looked ridiculous. And it is, when I really put on those rose-colored glasses and look at it that way, he looks right. I mean, really, suddenly when you realize, wait a minute, this is the 70s. This is Quicksilver in the 70s. This is not a 2014 Quicksilver. This is a dude in the 70s dressing like this, and suddenly it doesn't look as ridiculous. Look, overall, the trailer is brutally brilliant. It is just absolutely brutally brilliant. And let's remember, too, Bryan Singer, let's not be too surprised. Bryan Singer, who directed the best X-Men films so far with X-Men 1 and X-Men 2, both of them were brilliant. Having him back on board is great. So, yeah, just a fantastic trailer.
Well, I can't agree with you about Quicksilver. I still think he looks ridiculous. I do love this trailer. And also, another thing I like about it is that even though I've read the comic book, seeing this trailer, I don't know what's going to happen. Because the original comic book story of Days of Future Past was actually really short. I think it was like 2 or 3 issues. And it involved a bunch of different stuff. And this keeps the tone of it and the concept of Days of Future Past, but with a whole new, different, you know, plot and characters and all that stuff. So I'm excited. All right, Chris Lee, what's next?
Well, 4 words on X-Men, bring it to mama. I'm so ready for this film. I haven't been excited for an X-Men film since First Class, so super excited. All right, according to some reports, Fast and Furious 7 will use CGI and body doubles for Paul Walker's character, Brian O'Connor, to help complete the film. Supposedly, they have hired 4 actors with physiques similar to Paul's, and his face and voice will be used on top of them using CGI. As most of you know, Paul Walker died in a car accident back in November while on a break from filming Fast 7, which was in the middle of production. Jimmy, what do you think of this report and the possibility of using this method to finish the movie?
Well, it's not a new method. They've used this before. They used it for The Crow. They've used it in other times. I think he would want this film to be made. I want him to be a part of this film. I think it would be a nice legacy to his life, to his career. I want him to be a part of it. It makes sense to me. I'm sure they'll have to make some edits, but I'd rather than that than scrap his character altogether.
Okay. John, what do you think?
Look, this is trying to come up with an okay solution to an absolutely unwinnable situation. I mean, when you have a performer who is as important to the franchise as Paul Walker was, there is no quote-unquote right way to handle it. And it's just about finding the best possible thing you can do. And if they think they've come up with a good way to satisfyingly take Paul Walker out of the franchise, and in order to do that, look, we knew they'd have to do something, right? Whether it would be body double or using a little bit of CGI, because you can't just have him in the film and then all of a sudden inexplicably he's gone. With no rationale, no explanation, you can't do that. So what do? Well, there's very few options open to you. And while, you know, I'm not going to jump up and down about the idea of using CGI Paul Walker, what else were they going to do, really? I mean, it's making the best of a bad situation.
I personally am skeptical about this. I mean, Jimmy, you're right. This isn't a new method. They've used it before with Brandon Lee and The Crow. The difference is, though, The Crow is pretty much done. They just used him in a lot of action shots and wide shots. This is a whole different story. I mean, when Paul Walker passed away, they were only halfway through filming, and now they need to somehow weave him into the storyline and then kind of give him a nice send-off. And I appreciate the sentiment of it. I'm just worried that it's going to come off poorly.
But really, Dennis, what are the options? I mean, what's the alternative that presents themselves to them other than, like, say, starting the film completely from scratch and just not having Walker in it at all?
I mean, having not been able to read the script and I don't know what the story is, I don't know. But maybe there's a way story-wise they can weave it in where maybe halfway through the movie, like, he has to leave, you know? They can write it in and maybe use some of that CG and body double stuff, but use it limitedly. I don't know how good it's going to look if they decide, okay, well, we're just going to use him as much as possible. And, like, you know, is he going to be in the ending shot and he's like, you know, see you later, and it's like a CG face and whatnot?
Well, I mean, look at it this way. We both mentioned Brandon Lee.
Yeah.
Technically, they couldn't have done that years ago.
No.
Luckily, they didn't have to deal with that. Now we do have that technology, and I think they could pull it off pretty seamlessly. And I'd rather them do that than just rewrite it, redo it, start up from scratch.
And let's keep in mind too, they're not going to try to keep Paul Walker in the rest of the movie. They've already said they're going to quote unquote retire his character from the franchise. So what we're probably looking at is like maybe 2 scenes. Like, this is just me speculating, but you're probably looking at something like 2 scenes that they just need to do something narrative-wise to explain to the audience why he's now not in the rest of the movie. And, I mean, as long as you're not trying to stretch him out into a half hour of new footage with CGI Paul Walker, I think they'll be okay.
Well, if it's the way you're talking about, yeah, that sounds perfectly reasonable. I'm just worried that they're going to try and stretch it like, all right, we can do anything we want with this now.
Not like Jeff Bridges and Tron, the double, you know?
Yeah.
The chat board is a little split on whether they like the CGI Paul Walker as well. I've just kind of been going through, and some people are like, it'll be fine, and some people are pretty unsure. And then they're wanting to know why we didn't CGI John at the table today. Just throwing that out there.
Good question, John.
All right, guys, so now we're on the buy and sell portion. Chris Lee, what do we got?
In this weekend's box office battle, the debut of the latest young adult adaptation, Divergent, emerged easily as the victor with $56 million, while in a distant second place, Muppets Most Wanted earned $16.5 million in its opening weekend. Mr. Peabody and Sherman, in its third week, claimed the third spot with $11.7 million. Also in its third week, 300 Rise of an Empire pulled in $8.6 million. Rounding out the top five, the big surprise of the weekend was faith-based movie God's Not Dead debut with $8.5 million, despite only being in 780 screens. John, buy or sell Divergent's weekend box office numbers?
Well, I mean, I buy it. I mean, good for it. I'll be honest, this is one I missed because I thought I had a discussion with somebody where I didn't think it was going to break 40. On opening weekend, and it ended up breaking 50. So, I mean, that's great. I know a lot of people who really don't like the movie. I know a couple of people who really did. So it's kind of vicious that way. But this is the opening weekend they were hoping for. So good on them, and I guess they're going to start production on Divergent too, because, yeah, with this type of an opening, they got to be happy.
Jimmy?
You know, I saw the movie. I think it was an interesting start. But I buy the numbers. They were promoting the heck out of this thing. I mean, it was all over. They did a good job promoting it, and the fan base is huge. So I'm absolutely not surprised. Shailene Woodley was a great choice. She's likable. She's a incredible star quality. So I'm not surprised at all. Yeah, sequel, no doubt.
I buy the numbers of Divergent. I'll reserve my comments about the movie for a later time.
Facebook wars were started.
but yeah, this I think lends itself well for the young adult adaptations because we've had a string of like misses, you know, in terms of box office success. I haven't seen most of these movies. Mortal Instruments, Vampire Academy, Beautiful Creatures, all those failed at the box office. The Host even, from Stephenie Meyer. But this one did pretty good numbers. It didn't do Twilight numbers, it didn't do Hunger Game numbers, but still, $56 million isn't anything to sneeze at. So, Chris Lee, I know you are a big fan of this movie. So what do you think about these box office numbers?
I think they're amazing. You know, these were books that I found out the movie was coming. I said, let me read the books. By the time I was finished with the third book wasn't out yet. It's the only book I've ever pre-ordered in my life. So needless to say, I was a little excited for the movie to come out. It was exactly what I wanted as a fan of the franchise. I also went with two people who had never read the books that both really enjoyed the books. They're not for everyone. They're not to the caliber of Hunger Games. Hunger Games is a little bit more fun to watch for everyone, whether you know the story or not. Divergent, I think you need to know a little bit more of the story, but still, all around, I think it was a really fun film.
And let's talk about this for a second. Muppets.
So good.
What happened?
I have no idea.
The first Muppet film made nearly $30 million on its opening weekend. It was pretty much universally loved, and for good reason. That movie was awesome. The marketing, I think, for the new Muppet film has been solid. It's coming off of a beloved first film, and its opening weekend box office drops nearly in half. $16 million for a much better reviewed film than Divergent, and yet its opening weekend drops nearly in half to $16 million. I have no rational explanation for this. It's really unfortunate because the movie deserves better.
Agreed. I was so disappointed to see those numbers because I love the movie. I've seen it twice. I guess you just don't open a Muppet movie against a YA crowd, you know? Yeah, it's sad, isn't it? Come on, go see the Muppets. It's great. Seriously.
Yeah, I saw the Muppets. I really liked it. I think it has to do with the fact that it is. You know, the last one came off a huge long break before the last Muppets movie, and now this is only, what, 2 years, a year and a half later, so I think that the freshness of that kind of wore off on people.
Don't care. I want to go see the Muppets.
But it's Kermit!
Yes, Miss Piggy, come on.
It's not easy being green.
All right, Chris Lee, what's next?
In an appearance at Loyola Marymount earlier this month, executive producer Judd Apatow was asked about the new Pee-Wee Herman movie. He said this when asked about the project. We've kicked around a couple of titles. Pee-wee Takes a Holiday. That was one of them. But we have a great script that he wrote with a friend of mine, Paul Russ, and I think we're probably going to get to do that soon. Jimmy, buy or sell that we will actually see a new Pee-wee Herman movie anytime soon.
Oh, I want to buy this so bad. So I'm going to, because Pee-wee's Big Adventure is one of my favorite movies of all time. I love that movie so much. I love the idea of Judd working with him. Yes, buy. Big time.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to sell it. I also love Pee-wee's Big Adventure, but it doesn't sound like there's anything solid here. You know, Judd Apatow's executive producing this thing. They still don't have a director. He doesn't know if he's gonna direct it or not, or he's gonna get someone else. He also has another movie he's working on, Trainwreck, that's next. So if he decides he's gonna direct it, it's gonna be a while before they even get started. And yeah, and Pee-wee's just one of those things where, like, I know you and me love it, and you know, people our age. I just don't know how much of the younger generation know who Pee-wee is.
They don't, but they will.
They will.
John, what do you think?
I got to sell this. I think 5 years ago, maybe, me and a large group of friends were really excited about the notion of, you know, Pee-wee Herman coming back and all that kind of stuff. I think some of that enthusiasm is gone. I think this is a situation of a little bit too little and a little bit too late, and I'll say this too, and it pains me to say it. Some of the shine has come off of Judd Apatow for me. I mean, to me, he still directed the greatest I still think The 40-Year-Old Virgin is, if not then amongst the greatest comedies ever made. But his last two films, to me, have been awful. I thought This Is 40 was awful. I thought Funny People was awful. So, you know, there's not a lot about this news to me that I find exciting. So I hope to be proven wrong. Totally, I hope to be proven wrong. I think a new Pee-wee that's really funny and great would be awesome. But for now, I got to sell.
All right, Chrisley, what's next?
Writer and director M. Night Shyamalan has released details about his latest movie, a psychological thriller titled Sundowning. Sundowning will be a low-budget feature starring Kathryn Hahn, who plays a mother whose two children visit their grandparents and something goes horribly wrong. The title is believed to be a reference to sundowner syndrome, which is a mental condition where older people get anxious, angry, depressed, or frightened when the sun goes down. Dennis, buy or sell Sundowning?
Well, as a huge fan of M. Night Shyamalan, oh wait, no, I can't even say that with a straight face. No, I am definitely selling this. I'm not gonna buy anything M. Night Shyamalan until I actually see something I like. I mean, the last thing I saw that he did was Unbreakable, and that was a long time ago. He's doing another psychological thriller. You know, who knows what kind of weird twist, you know, Kathryn Hahn ends up realizing that she's just seeing herself as a child visiting her grandparents. I don't know. But it's definitely a sell for me. Jimmy?
Had it been just her, I would have bought it. Absolutely. But no, I sadly have to sell this. I don't. Maybe a low budget will do them good. Maybe we'll all be proven wrong and it'll be amazing. But I don't know. I'm selling it so far. John, what about you?
Hold on to your horses. I'm going to buy this. And everybody knows I am not the Shamhammer's biggest fan. Everybody knows this. But Shamhammer is also not a one-hit wonder. Like, we forget that in the midst of all these horrible films he's made, we forget that he wasn't just a one-hit wonder. He made several pretty damn good films. And I have to believe somewhere down in that, you know, Shamhammer heart, there is still some talent there to bring us something good. And actually, I think reverting to something smaller scale might be really good for him. So maybe I'm being completely naive. No, scratch it. I am being completely naive. But I'm going to hold out some. And how is it wrong of me that when I saw the title for this movie, the only thing I could think of for anybody who's Canadian, you know what I'm talking about, the most famous strip club maybe in all of Canada and revered around the world is called the Sundowner in Niagara Falls, and that's all that went through my head. And I thought, he's making a movie about strip club with a twist. So, yeah, so I'm going to buy, completely naively, I'm going to buy.
It's an old geezer strip club.
Yeah,
like it's where old geezers go.
Yes, like Cocoon meets a strip club.
All right, before we get into the mailbag section, make sure you tweet your questions that we're going to answer live at AMC Movie News. So let's get into the mailbag. Chris Lee, what do we got?
Yes, that means I have to get my Twitter ready.
Yes.
All right, Mitchell G writes, hello, AMC Movie News. What's up? So this is about my dislike of non-Marvel made films. Non-Marvel made Marvel films, excuse me. I understand Sony and 20th are hanging on for money's sake, but it's a shame when these companies hold rich stories and characters and they mess them up. X-Men are some of the worst comic movies ever made. They have no soul and feel like they are only made for money and consumers. Whereas Marvel, I feel, don't care about that and just want to portray their characters true to their universe.
Sorry, I couldn't help but laugh.
Hold on, we're not done yet. This is why I feel they deserve their characters back. So at least if they mess up in the house and not some company who knows nothing about comics and doesn't care about comics. Guys?
So, yeah, I'm sorry, Mitchell. I'm going to have to completely disagree with you. I mean, first off, personally, I like most of the X-Men movies, aside from X-Men 3 and the first Wolverine.
The first Wolverine, yeah.
But that's opinion-based. And, you know, if you don't like them, that's totally fine. The second part, though, of Marvel being the only studio that cares about comic book movies and they don't seem to care about the money and the consumers, I'm sorry, you're wrong. You're wrong. I mean, if Marvel knew that if they could dress up Thor in a tutu would get them $50 million extra, they would do it. But they know that fans are gonna, backlash against it, so that's why they do care about it, and the other properties as well. They care about the money more, So I don't think there's this whole thing where Marvel cares about the comic book characters only, and everyone else is only in it for the money. John, what do you think?
There's this wonderful, fantasy land where everybody drinks rainbows from the sky and dances in fields of lilies and studios don't care about making money, but that is a fairy tale land. Disney, and Dennis, I love your analogy, and Dennis is completely right. If Disney thought their next Thor film would make $50 million, hell, if they thought their next Thor film would make $10 million extra dollars by putting Thor in a tutu, and dancing with M. Night Shyamalan, they would do it because it's the movie business. And I got to completely disagree with you. I'm sorry. X-Men 1 and X-Men 2 are a couple of and Spider-Man 2. Those are some of the greatest comic book films ever made. And I love The Amazing Spider-Man. Yeah, Fantastic Four movie sucked. X-Men 3 was subpar. Spider-Man 3 was bad. But guess what? Iron Man 2 was bad. I like Iron Man 3. A lot of people don't, but a lot of people didn't like Iron Man 3. Specifically, ironically, when you're talking about faithfulness to comic, one of the big reasons a lot of people didn't like Iron Man 3 is because what they did to the Mandarin character. I did personally like Iron Man 3, but But this notion that, Disney doesn't care about that stuff. They just want to make faithful comic book movies. No, listen, they make faithful comic book movies. Some people will argue about how faithful they actually are, but they make great comic book movies. The reason they make the comic book movies they do is because they believe it will make them more money. It's all subjective. Your opinion about films is no more and no less valid than mine. So that's awesome that you like certain ones and don't like certain others. But my personal opinion is that you're way off base. X-Men 1, X-Men 2, Spider-Man 2. These are all just fantastic films. Anyway, Jimmy?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the trailer we just saw. You can't tell me there's no heart in that. Everyone wants to make money, period. But that's just as legit as any of the Marvel movies. Hey, I'm a huge Marvel fan. I love Marvel Studios. I love the movies. But there's some of the X-Men movies, as you mentioned, John. Some of the Spider-Man 2, fantastic. So, yeah, we're going to disagree a little bit on that one.
Just a little bit. Chris Lee, what's next?
Austin G writes, "Hey all, keep up the great work. I'm excited for the movie Madness Brackets. Dennis made a comment in a previous show about Need for Speed and its audience versus critic rating. Why is it that so many movies have very different ratings between critics and the audience who have seen them? I've seen many movies that critics scored around 20% to 30%, but audiences score around 60% to 80%. Which one determines a movie's success more, critics or audiences?"
Well, let's take that last part first. What determines the success? It's the
I
audience.
love this question.
It's the audience. I mean, the studios do care about the critics because they do, sway people's opinions, but it's not by much, And Transformers is a perfect example of that. Critics hated it, myself included, but it made a ton of money, and that's why they keep making more, and that's why they keep inviting Michael Bay back and gave him a truckload of money to make even the fourth one, even though he didn't want to. So, yeah, in terms of that, the success is definitely for the audience. Why do critics and audiences vary? I think expectations. I think critics have seen a lot more movies. Their expectations for certain things, maybe they get tired of certain things they've seen. So that's maybe why, but it's not all the time. I mean, I'd say the critics agree with the audience maybe at least 70% of the time.
It also depends on the genre. With horror, I always look at Rotten Tomatoes and I see, okay, if a horror film has like a 40% rating, it's usually probably pretty good. Because critics don't like horror films. They don't like certain comedies. They don't like, Adam Sandler movies or what have you. But generally, audiences do. They know what they're getting out of these movies, and they know what they're going to see. And as long as they get that, they're happy with it.
It's also big on demographic. Like,
Yeah.
if it's a young adult movie, I guarantee you 90% of the critics are going to think it's boring and uneventful, and the people that the movie are made for are going to love it. And I see that happen all the time.
Divergent, perfect example.
A lot of them.
John?
Well, I mean, Jimmy, when you say, film critics don't like horror films, Jimmy, you are a film critic.
I know, but
and you like horror films. But I mean, look, here's the thing. Really, it's about perception. The perception is that the critics are always completely different than the audience. But the reality is, as Dennis was pointing out, is that that's not the case. The reality is they're usually within 20% of each other, the vast majority of the time. And sometimes they're not. And then Chris Lee brings up an excellent point. Remember, these viewer ratings are done by people who saw the film. So if you're talking about a Divergent, you're talking mostly about an audience that is predisposed to liking Divergent. Remember that motocross, I can't remember the exact name, it might have actually been called Motocross, that was out a bunch of years ago about, dirt bike racers and stuff like that. It was a horrible movie. It was just terrible. And nobody went to go see it except people who were really into motocross. And they went to go see it, and they liked it because it was about motocross. So the audience rating ends up being a lot higher than the critic rating because it was only really being reviewed by that specific demographic of audience. So sometimes when you see those differences, it's because of who actually saw the film, and was that audience predisposed to liking it in the first place, as opposed to a general audience, as say represented by the critics, who aren't predisposed to liking it or not liking it in the first place. So the perception is different from the reality. The reality is the critic reviews are not often that different from the audience. Things you have to take in consideration, like what Chris Lee was saying about the demographic of who saw it.
All right. So now time for the live question portion. Chris Lee, we've got any interesting questions for us?
Hold on, I do have a few coming up. Comic Reject 94 says, "Hi everyone at AMC. Do you think that Sin City: A Dame to Kill For will be a hit at the box office?"
I think it's going to be kind of like how 300 Rise of the Empire is, where I think it's going to do well, but it's not going to do as well as the original, because I think that newness, that the different look and the feel of it that was so fresh when the first one came out is not going to remain for this one. So I think it's going to do well, but not as well as the first one. Jimmy?
I agree. I want to say it will do better, but just because I think the cast is really great and I'm excited to see it. But yeah, I think we're going to see a little bit of a downward spiral with this film.
John?
Yeah, I agree with Jimmy. Look, the first film made 155-something million, I think, worldwide. This one's not going to make 100 million worldwide. I'll be surprised if it breaks 50 million in total in North American box. This is too little too late. This is a movie that should have happened 7 years ago. It's been 9 years. The first trailer was unimpressed. At least I was unimpressed with the first trailer, and I really like the first Sin City. I think the first Sin City is great, but this is too little, too late. The first trailer didn't do it for me. I think you're going to see a definite downward trend. I don't think this is going to be a hit film.
Garrett Farney wants to know, will there ever be a Spaceballs remake?
No.
I mean, it's hard to remake something that's a spoof to begin with. Has there ever been a spoof remake? Like a remake of a spoof?
There should be.
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. It's not going to happen. I mean, Spaceballs was perfect for its time, but nowadays, I mean, also, you know, people are turned off by a lot of these horrible spoof movies. I mean, back in the day, they used to do them well, you know, with Spaceballs, and, you know, we had like Naked Gun and Hot Shots Part 2, like stuff like that. And now, like all those Meet the Spartans and all those other ones, they're just terrible.
Now, there was a time when Airplane 2 was considered a bad sequel, a bad movie. Now that's probably a classic compared to what we're seeing.
You know, and we forget, like, one of my favorite ones of all time, and I'm forgetting the name of it, but it's with the one with Val Kilmer.
Oh yeah, Top Secret. I love that movie.
Top Secret. That's got to be my favorite spoof one. That was Hot Shots Part 2. Yeah, there's no good ones anymore. They're all just garbage now.
All right, Tyler Myers wants to know, do you think Storm will die in Days of Future Past?
Well, I'm guessing you're saying that because in the trailer you see one of the Sentinels go up and about to shank her. Maybe, but it's a time traveling thing. So it's one of those things where, yeah, she could die, but then things in the past get changed, and then she, you know, at the end she comes out and we learn that she's still alive.
Yeah, I agree. I hope not. I like Storm. Am I alone? I like Storm? Does anyone like Storm?
You know what? I'm not going to put money on this, but I think she dies. And I thought she was going to die before we saw this trailer. Remember, I think they're going to clean house in the X-Men franchise to pave the way for bringing the first-class generation of actors into modern times so they can move forward with a unified Fantastic Four X-Men shared universe. And I think to do that, they're going to sweep away some of the older characters, and I think that probably includes Storm. I think she's on the chopping block.
Ooh.
Ruined my day, man.
All right. I think we'll do one more. Marvin Bell wants to know, do we have any new information on Pitch Perfect 2? I love the first one so much and didn't hear much about the sequel. Thanks.
Jimmy, you know anything about Pitch Perfect 2?
My friend's in it. That's all I know. I've heard. I know that Rebel's back and Anna's back.
Yes.
That's about all I know. What about you, John? What do you know?
And also, Elizabeth Banks is going to direct the second one.
Okay, we know that.
To me, that's the most interesting storyline here, is the fact that Elizabeth Banks is going to be directing this. And I think that's really fascinating. I know she's been doing a lot of work behind the camera on certain things. Look, Pitch Perfect was just one of those films that was a real pleasant surprise because I know to me, and I think to a lot of people, it just looks stupid. And it looked like this dumb throwaway little movie that's just going to be dumped somewhere. And it actually ended up being really charming and really enjoyable. Like, colored me surprised. I'm glad they're coming back to do it again. Is this a movie that needs a sequel? No. But I think this is one of those situations where we'd like to revisit these characters again. Elizabeth Banks directing it. Other than that, though, I haven't heard anything, per se that's new about it, but that's where we are.
Oh, I really liked it as well, and they are making it because it didn't cost much money. The first one, it made not a buttload of money, but a decent amount, like multiple times what the budget was. So it's a no-brainer to make a sequel.
It's so good, and I think the only thing that's been released other than the girls coming back is she mentioned that instead of being incoming freshmen, they would be graduating seniors in this one, and I think that's all that they've talked about so far.
Hey, could I mention one thing here? There have been some funny comments in the chat board, but Eric Tisch wrote, I think, my favorite line of the day in the chat board. He wrote, whoever kills Storm, going back to the Storm topic, whoever kills Storm should say this before they do it. Do you know what happens to a storm when it's attacked by Sentinels? Same thing that happens to everything else. Love it.
All right, guys, so that's it for today. I want to thank our guest, Jimmy O. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter, Jimmy to the O. You can find me on Facebook, James Oster, and there you go.
And through the magic of technology, we have John Campea. Let us know how it's going in Las Vegas and CinemaCon over there, John.
Yeah, I'm going to be doing some video updates on our YouTube channel about all the different things and the different studio presentations that I'm going to be seeing here. So watch for those each day popping up on our YouTube channel. You can find me on the social media networks at John Campea.
And our lovely host, Chris Lee. Where can people find you?
You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Chris Lee and the Movie Chick on Tumblr.
And you can find me on Twitter at ThinkHero and on YouTube, ThinkHero Pro. And make sure to subscribe to AMC Movie Talk on this YouTube channel and tweet at us, check out our Facebook page and everything else. Thanks, guys.
If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to AMC Movie News on YouTube. It's free and a great way to stay updated with all the latest movie news and check out our daily show, AMC Movie Talk. Also, don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Twitter to stay in the loop for our special prizes, giveaways, and contests.